Max is quickly thrust into the action as he is pursued across the wasteland by a group of savage raiders. Driving his iconic interceptor, Max attempts to outrun them, but the odds are against him. The raiders capture Max and drag him to the Citadel. Max is stripped of his freedom and humanity. Max is chained, tattooed with his blood type and medical details. Meanwhile, within the Citadel, we meet Imperator Furiosa, one of Immortan Joe's most trusted lieutenants. Furiosa is a fierce warrior, but beneath her cold exterior lies a deep-seated hatred for Joe and his regime. She has a plan that will set off a chain of events leading to one of the most exhilarating and relentless chases ever seen on screen. Furiosa is assigned to lead a war rig convoy to Gastown to retrieve fuel. Instead of heading straight to Gastown, Furiosa veers off course. This deviation does not go unnoticed, and it soon becomes clear that Furiosa has more than just fuel on her mind. In the back of the war rig, hidden away in a compartment, are Immortan Joe's 5 wives, women who he has taken as his breeders to ensure his line continues. Furiosa, risking everything, has decided to help them escape, to take them to the Green Place. When Joe discovers that his prized breeders have been stolen, he is enraged. He rallies his war boys and gives chase, leading to the heart-pounding first major action sequence of the film. As the war rig tears across the desert, a furious battle ensues. Nux, desperate to prove himself to Joe, straps Max to the front of his car, using him as a human shield as he joins the chase. The convoy of Joe's forces is a sight to behold. Monstrous vehicles armed to the teeth, blaring war drums, and the Doof Warrior, a blind guitarist strapped to a massive speaker rig, shredding an electric guitar that spews flames. The chase is chaotic, with cars crashing, explosions lighting up the sky, and the war rig barreling through it all with Furiosa at the helm. Max, with his instincts for survival kicking in, manages to escape his bonds during the chaos. He fights Nux and the war boys, struggling to gain control of the war rig. It's a desperate battle for freedom as Max attempts to take control of his destiny once again. Max finally confronts Furiosa. A tense standoff ensues, weapons drawn, but there's a mutual understanding between them. They are both survivors, both driven by the need to escape the horrors of their world. Furiosa convinces Max to join them, knowing they need each other to survive the onslaught. Together, they fend off Joe's forces in a spectacular display of vehicular combat. The war rig becomes a moving fortress, with Max and Furiosa working in tandem to destroy their pursuers. Max's combat experience and Furiosa's driving skills make them a formidable team, but the odds are still heavily against them. After barely escaping Joe's clutches, the war rig speeds through the desert, heading towards the Green Place. The women, though traumatized, find moments of respite and camaraderie in their shared struggle. Furiosa, once the stoic warrior, begins to show glimpses of vulnerability. She is haunted by the memories of her past, of being taken from her home and forced into servitude under Joe. The Green Place represents hope, a return to innocence, and a chance at redemption. Max, still grappling with his own demons, remains distant. He is a man of few words, more comfortable in the chaos of battle than in the quiet moments in between. Yet, despite his gruff exterior, there's a sense of shared purpose growing between him and Furiosa. They are both products of a broken world, and while they may not trust easily, they understand each other in ways words cannot express. Nux, who has failed to die gloriously in battle and has been abandoned by his fellow war boys, stows away on the war rig. Initially a zealot loyal to Immortan Joe, Nux undergoes a transformation over the course of the journey. After a near-death experience and a chance encounter with Capable, one of Joe's wives, Nux begins to question his beliefs. Capable shows him kindness and empathy, something he's never known, and this small act of humanity plants the seed of doubt in his mind. The journey is fraught with danger. The war rig must navigate through treacherous terrain, including a deadly swamp where the rig gets bogged down. With Joe's forces still in pursuit, every minute counts. They encounter the Buzzards, a faction of scavengers who have turned their vehicles into spiked death machines. Another brutal battle ensues, with Max and Furiosa barely managing to fend them off. Finally, after days of relentless pursuit, they reach what Furiosa believes to be the edge of the Green Place. But what they find shatters their hopes. The land is poisoned, a barren swamp filled with twisted trees and toxic mud. The Green Place is no more, consumed by the same decay that has swallowed the rest of the world. The realization is devastating. Furiosa collapses in despair, her dreams of redemption crumbling before her eyes. The wives, too, are overwhelmed by the hopelessness of their situation. They have risked everything, only to find that their sanctuary is gone. It is here, in this moment of despair, that Max steps forward. He suggests they turn back to take the fight to Immortan Joe and reclaim the Citadel. Max's logic is brutal but sound. The Citadel is the only place with abundant water, food, and green space. Taking control of it would give them a chance to survive, a chance to build something new. Furiosa, though initially reluctant, sees the truth in Max's words. They have nothing left to lose, and the Citadel is their best hope for a future. The women agree, and with renewed determination, they turn the war rig around, ready to face the horrors they fled from. The war rig barrels forward through the desert, a fortress on wheels, while Immortan Joe's monstrous convoy closes in from all directions. The war boys, crazed with the promise of glory, throw themselves at the war rig with reckless abandon, chanting their war cries and spraying their mouths with chrome to prepare for their perceived journey to Valhalla. Max and Furiosa, now fully aligned in their mission, coordinate their efforts with a deadly precision. Furiosa drives the war rig, navigating the treacherous terrain and avoiding the various traps set by Joe's forces. Max, armed with whatever weapons he can scavenge, fights off the war boys as they attempt to board the rig. The wives, though not warriors, play their part too, using their wits and resourcefulness to keep the rig moving and defend themselves. Nux, inspired by Capable's kindness and no longer loyal to Joe, decides to join the fight on the side of Furiosa and Max. He knows the tactics of the war boys better than anyone and uses his knowledge to sabotage Joe's forces from within. In a pivotal moment, Nux sacrifices himself by crashing his vehicle into a key convoy truck, creating a massive explosion that blocks Joe's path and buys the war rig precious time. His final words, "Witness me." As the war rig approaches the narrow canyon that leads back to the Citadel, Joe's forces unleash their final, most terrifying weapon, the People Eater's massive tanker truck, loaded with explosives. This grotesque monstrosity rumbles forward, determined to obliterate the war rig in a final, cataclysmic showdown. Furiosa, knowing that they cannot outrun or outgun the People Eater, devises a desperate plan. She orders Max to take the wheel while she climbs onto the side of the war rig. Using her mechanical arm and sheer determination, she manages to leap onto the People Eater's truck. With the People Eater's truck now under their control, Furiosa redirects it into the path of Joe's convoy, creating a massive barrier of fire and wreckage that blocks the canyon entrance. The explosion is enormous, lighting up the night sky and sending shockwaves through the desert. The remaining war boys are either incinerated in the blast or forced to retreat, their path to the Citadel cut off. But Immortan Joe, driven by his obsession to reclaim his property, is not so easily deterred. His personal vehicle, a monstrous creation adorned with the skulls of his enemies and powered by a massive engine, roars through the wreckage, determined to overtake the war rig. The final confrontation between Joe and Furiosa is imminent. Furiosa, weakened by the earlier battle, confronts Joe in a heart-stopping showdown atop the war rig. The two engage in a vicious struggle, with Joe's brute strength clashing against Furiosa's relentless will. The fight is brutal, raw, and personal. Furiosa, with a final, desperate burst of strength, rips off Joe's oxygen mask, the source of his power and intimidation. As Joe gasps for air, she slams the metal chain of the war rig's hook into his face, tearing it apart and ending his reign of terror once and for all. With Joe's death, his forces are thrown into disarray, and the power structure of the Citadel begins to crumble. The remaining war boys, disillusioned and leaderless, abandon the chase, leaving Max, Furiosa, and the wives to make their way back into the Citadel. The people trapped in the fortress look on in awe and disbelief. The sight of Furiosa, bloodied but unbroken, leading the war rig into the heart of the Citadel signals a new dawn. The death of Immortan Joe, their oppressor, sends ripples of change through the crowd. The people begin to realize that they no longer have to live in fear, that they can rise up and take control of their own destiny. Max, ever the lone wolf, knows that this victory is not his to claim. He has been the catalyst, the spark that ignited the rebellion, but the future of the Citadel belongs to Furiosa and the women who have fought so hard to reclaim their freedom. As Furiosa is lifted on the shoulders of the people, hailed as their savior and leader, Max quietly slips away, blending into the crowd. He has no place in the world they are building, no home to return to, no family to reclaim. In the final moments, as Furiosa ascends the platform to the controls of the Citadel's water system, The people look to her with hope in their eyes. She pulls the lever, releasing torrents of water from the massive reservoirs that Joe had kept locked away. The water cascades down, drenching the parched and desperate masses below. The symbolism is clear. A new era of life and renewal is beginning. Max, watching from a distance, turns and walks away, disappearing into the wasteland from which he came. The world may be on the brink of change, but for Max, the journey continues. He is and always will be a drifter in a world gone mad, a man searching for redemption that may never come.